She frowned in annoyance because though killing a group of red axes in the underway would have posed certain problems, invading their fortress was likely to prove far more difficult than an alternative occurred to her. She proceeded to the door. Someone watched her approach. She couldn't see the peephole or hidden sentry box, but she felt the presence of his gaze. She knocked on the panel. After several seconds, a gruff voice sounded through the door. Password. I don't know it, she said. I'm not one of you, but I have business with your chief. He's busy. Tell him it's about the strongbox Aaron Sir Randolph stole from the Ranger. For a while there was no response to that. Then the door opened. The short passage on the other side likewise reminded Saffrey's of castle architecture, for it resembled a barbican with murder holes in the ceiling and another stout door at the far end. Two ruffians, one a black-bearded man whose brawny arms writhed with tattoos, the other a naked, crouched measle, waved her inside. The latter was another of Oogle's surprises. Cephas would have thought the stunted, green-skinned, semi-aquatic brutes with their talons and webbed feet too feral and dull-witted to relate to other humanoids as anything but prey. But plainly, the leader of the Red Axes had attracted at least one of the brutes into his employ. We're going to search you, said the tattooed man. It was the same voice Cephas had heard before. Here, she said, removing her chakrams and cesti from her pockets. The ruffian frisked her anyway, fondling her in the process. It didn't bother her. During her training, her dark father and other teachers had systematically subjected her to ordeals compared to which a bit of lascivious groping was meaningless. The important thing was that the sentry failed to discover the various spell components secreted about her person. The confiscation of those would have diminished her capabilities far more than the surrender of her weapons. But even though the tattooed man the tattooed man's impudence failed to perturb her, she memorized her face, her chastisement later on. Her faith virtually required it, for as much as anything, the Lady of Loss was a goddess of revenge. The toughs escorted her on through cellars crammed with the podge of no doubt stolen and smuggled goods, then up a flight of stairs into the living areas of what had once been a lavish mansion. In its essence, it still was, but the dirt, dust, scattered garbage, and smell of mildew marred the splendor. Eventually, they reached a spacious solar on the second floor. The north wall was essentially one large window made of genuine glass, and the expensive panes, cracked, smeared, and grimy though they were, provided a panoramic view of the sculptor, the bridges spanning it, and the moon, her tears and the stars sparkling across the night skies. The leader of the Red Axes apparently used the chamber as a lord would employ his hall to grant audience and issue decrees, for his battle axe laying across his thighs, the Tanaruk lounged in a high-backed gilded throne at the far end. A dozen of his followers loitered around in attendance, and the prisoner sprawled on the floor. Someone had pulled the sack off his head, revealing haggard, intelligent features, frightened but defiant, and an old scar around his face, or around his neck. "Bring her closer," the Tanaruk growled. The measle gave Cephas a shove, its filthy, likely disease-bearing talons jabbing her, but not quite breaking the skin. She advanced and said, "Kesk, Turnskull." He grunted a swinish grunt and asked, "And who are you?" "Cephas, you throcked. What do you know about the lockbox?" "I wouldn't bore you with the tale of everything that happened in Far Ormond months ago," she said. "Let's just say I know what's in it, and I came to Weeble to acquire it." Kesk grinned around the long, curved spike of his tusks. "Then you're out of luck," he said. "It's already spoken for. I figured you already had a buyer. I'll pay more. I can lay my hands on 300,000 gold pieces worth of gems, rubies, emeralds, diamonds, tomb jade, and ghost stones, all of the finest quality." The lie reduced the hall to astonished, greedy silence for a moment, and then Kesk said, "I don't know you. Why should I believe in this treasure trove?" Cephas hoped an admixture of truth would make her deception seem more plausible. "I serve the Lady of Loss," he said. "Like you Red Axes, our temple reaves plenty of wealth from those unable to defend it." She waited a beat. "Would it bother you to deal with us?" Kesk, leering, said, Do you know where the race of Tanarooks sprang from? I'll trade with anybody, no matter what devil goddess she worships, so long as I can turn a profit. And I guess that the secret stronghold of Shar, wherever they may be, do have plenty of coin. But can you prove you're one of the priestess? Or am I just supposed to take it on faith, like the existence of all these jewels you're going to give us? Have you heard of the Dark Moon? Kest's eyes, red and faintly luminous, like embers, narrowed. Of Shar's clergy, he said, yet not their protectors and assassins. Cephres inclined her head and replied, something like that. If you've heard of us, you know we study a certain unarmed fighting style. If I defeat a couple of your men at once, using only my empty hands, will that prove I'm who I claim to be? It might, the Tanarooks said. And if they beat you down instead, well, we were already planning on some torture. We might as well question you and old Nikos at once. He can tell us where his son keeps the coffer, and you can give us the truth about all those gems. Pressmer, sewer rat, you brought her up here. You deal with her. Or Viega, you help. You can bleed her and break her bones, but try not to kill her. The tattooed man, Pressmer, Cephres assumed, whirled off his shirt leather cape, dangled it in one hand, and drew his short sword with the other. The measle, the monastic wondered if sewer rat was its actual name, translated into human speech, or just a nickname the other rogues had given it. Simply hissed and crouched. Eventually it saw no need for any weapons other than its claws. Orvega, a female orc, heft a war club in both hands. Cephres stood still as her opponent spread out to encircle her. Then suddenly she bellowed a battle cry, pivoted, and leaped into the air, kicking at Presmer. Startled, he recoiled as she'd intended. She touched down, whirled, and Sewer Rat and Orviega were lunging at her. That, too, was as she desired. She turned her back and planted at Presmer to lure them in. Control what your adversaries did, and win, and you were well on your way to defeating them. Twisting at the hip, she performed a double-arm block that bounced the war club harmlessly away. She then punched the startled Urbuega in the snout, breaking bone and knocking the orc unconscious, and shoved her into sewer rat, which served to knock the runtish measle backwards, spoiling its frenzied attack. Floundering out from under the dead weight of its comrades, the black-eyed creature snarled and spat. Cephres would have rushed Sewer Rat while the measle was still off balance and encumbered, except that she knew enough time had passed for Presmer to have returned to the fray. She turned, and he swung his cape at her, seeking to blind her and stun her, too. Perhaps the garment had weights sewn into the hem. She dropped into a squat, letting the cloak fly harmlessly over her head, and she simultaneously hooked his ankle with her foot. Presmer crashed down on his back. Cephres sensed Sewer Rat pouncing. She turned, grabbed the measle, immobilizing its raking claws in the process, spun it through the air, and smashed it down on top of Presmer. The impact snapped bones and stunned the both of them, and Cephres's only remaining problem was resisting the impulse to go ahead and make the kills. A long, slow breath served to buttress her self-control. She inclined her head to Kesk. "There," she said. He gave a grunting nod. If he had any concern for the welfare of the followers she just mauled, she could see no sign of it in his demeanor. I guess you probably do belong to the Dark Moon," the Tannerite said. It still doesn't prove you have a king's ransom and jewels to barter. I'll produce them when the time comes. If I don't, simply sell the book to the person who first asked you to steal it. Fact of the matter is, he promised more than coin. Do you trust him to keep his pledges? Cephres replied. Once he has the book in hand? Kesk spat. The gesture left a strand of saliva, which he didn't bother to wipe away, dangling beside the base of one tusk. He said, "I don't trust anybody much. Rest assured, if it's a guarantee of future help you want, or even a genuine alliance, no one can offer more than the followers of Shar. We often make common cause with others who stand against the witless laws of men." I'll think about it," said Kesk. "Tell me how to get in touch with you. I'd hope to stay with you for a time being. The Red Axe snorted and said, "I still don't know what to make of you, human. Until I do, I don't want you running around my house." but you may need me. We may need to work together to take possession of the book. I doubt it. I take it you're going to try two approaches, Cephas said. The first will be to hope Aaron's father knows the location of the stronghold and torture the secret out of him. Do your worst, the old man rasped. It won't matter. I don't know where the cursed thing is. Cephas ignored him and stay focused on Kesk. The problem, she continued, is that as we can see from all those scars, somebody got to him before you and mangled him severely. He's fragile now, and elderly too, elderly to boot. If you question him in some crude fashion, his heart is likely to stop. But a child of the Dark Moon understands the human body as a healer understands it. It's part of our secret lore. I can cause a prisoner's excruciating pain without doing serious harm. Kesh shrugged and said, that could come in handy, I suppose. I can make myself just as useful if you need to trade the old man for the book, because it may not go smoothly. Aaron may decide he'd rather be rich than regain his father. He may try to trick you, or you may decide to deal falsely with him. The wretch broke our deal. I'm no longer obliged to keep any promises I gave him. I agree, and the point is, I can help you catch him. I have my skills, and he won't know we're working together until it's too late. The Tanaruk, scowling, said, you're not as special as you think. You're a woman. We Red Axes have managed to run Weevil for years now without any help from the likes of you. But you haven't managed to catch Aaron Sarundel. He's still running around free with the strongbox, laughing at you. Kess glared and trembled. His hands clenched on the haft of his axe. For a second, Cephas wondered if she'd pushed too hard and would have to defend herself against him and all his henchmen too. She called the words of the spell to mind. Then, however, he brought himself under control. All right, you can stay for the time being. He waved his hands at Aaron's father and added, let him see this light touch of yours. Cephas smiled without having to feign satisfaction, because she'd accomplished her objective in her new situation. Dangerous though it was, afforded her several advantages. As long as she was working with the Red Axes, she wouldn't have to worry about their somehow laying hands on the book ahead of her. A gang of cutthroats could manage a prisoner more easily than could a lone monastic. and since Weeble was their city, they ought to have less trouble making contact with Aaron. When the time came, it would be challenging to snatch the prize and vanish from their midst, but she was confident of her ability to do so. She rounded on Nikos, who his courage notwithstanding, saw something in her manner that made him blanch. She jumped him, found the proper pressure point, and paralyzed him as she had the beggar boy. When Aaron slipped through the door of the crampling little shop, Delric Heldian was at his desk, whittling a chop from a piece of pine. The paunchy scribe was primarily in the business of writing and reading documents, but he'd made a profitable sideline of providing his illiterate clientele with a means of signing their names, or in the case of the budget-minded, their initials to a piece of parchment. Dalric looked up, realized who'd come to call on him, and his gray eyes opened wide. In light of recent events, that was all Aaron needed to see. He whipped out a throwing knife, cocked his arm, and Dalric froze. Are the Red Axes watching this place? Aaron asked. Are you supposed to give a signal? No, Dalric said. But Kesk's ruffians have been around hunting you. The Greyblades too, though they don't know who they're looking for. Why in the binder's name are you still in town? I can dodge the folk who wish me ill. I always have before. If you say so, I wish you'd put that knife down. Aaron returned the weapon to its sheath and said, You'll see it again up close if you try anything foolish. Why would I try? I'm a scribe, not one of you cutthroats, Delric replied. He produced a linen handkerchief and blotted the sweat on his round pink face. What's that muck on your tunic? I can smell the stink from over here. Demon gore. Aaron advanced to the desk, its surface littered with quills, inkwells, pink knives, pine shavings, a stack of parchment, and lancets for those who insisted on contracts and promissory notes signed in blood. He cleared his space, brought the black book out from under his cloak, and set it down. Delric goggled at it. This is the prize everyone wants so badly, the scribe said. Yes, I need you to read enough of it to tell me why. The scribe rubbed his thumb and fingertips together. Aaron sighed. He set the rest of his coin atop the desk. Delric regarded the copper and silver pieces without enthusiasm. "Is this all you have?" said the scribe. "If the Red Axes find out I helped you, it could mean my life. I'll give you more, lots more, once I sell this book. Or, if that's not good enough, I'll find somebody else to read it. And not only will you miss out on the coin, you'll never know what all the fuss was about." Aaron knew from past dealings that the clerk possessed a healthy streak of curiosity. "Oh, all right," Delric ran his fingers under the embossed words of the cover. "The title is The Black Bouquet. Does that mean anything to you?" "No, nor to me," Delric said. He opened the volume, and sweat, fragrance wafted up, combined with the smell of crumbling paper. He started to read. Aaron waited for a couple minutes until impatience got the better of him. "Well," he said. "Well," Delrain replied, "it's old. I could tell that much. The point is, languages, and our way of writing them, change over time." Aaron frowned and said, "That sounds strange. Why would they?" "They just do. And as a result, old books are more difficult to read than new ones. I'm having a slow time of it, but I think this one is a formulary." "A formulary? A recipe book," the scribe explained, "for making perfumes. That would explain all the flowery scents clinging to the pages, but magical perfumes. It doesn't seem like it." "Then what makes it so cursed special?" Aaron asked. "I may need to read it cover to cover to determine that." "How long will that take?" "Couple days, perhaps." "Thanks anyway. Maybe Delric was more trustworthy than Burgell. It would be nice to think so, but Aaron couldn't linger. No, it would be nice to think so, but Aaron couldn't linger that long, nor was he such a fool as to let the book out of his possession. "I'll figure it out some other way. By the way, you haven't seen me." "I understand," the scribe said. "For your own sake, I hope so." Aaron tucked the formulary back under his cloak, opened the door, checked the street for lurking cutthroats and patrolling gray blades, then prowled on his way. Concerned that someone might spot him moving through the open spaces comprising Lascalar Square, he swung wide around it and reached his own tower a few minutes later. As he climbed the rickety stairs, he was looking forward to telling his father about the adventures. Maybe Nikos had heard of the Black Bouquet. One glimpse of the open door at the top of the steps turned eagerness to anxiety. The old man would never have left it that way. Aaron started to run, realizing someone might be lying in wait inside the garret, and forced himself to proceed wearily instead. It was as hard as anything he'd ever done in his life. No one was waiting for him, Nikos included. Intruders had plainly ransacked the apartment and smashed it up as well, and scrawled a crimson battle axe sign on the wall so he'd know who to blame. Aaron felt stunned. He hadn't anticipated Kesk's finding his home. No enemy had ever sought it out before, even though a few friends and tradesmen knew where it was. Even if he'd expected it, he wouldn't have thought the red axes would hurt Nikos. The old man had done nothing to offend them, and he had in his time been a respected member of the outlaw fraternity. In the dance, the door, and the hungry haunting, the bard still told tales of his most daring thefts. Aaron realized that up until then, his rogue's life, though perilous, had always seemed to abide by certain rules. His rivals in the law would try to interfere with him, but only up to a point. Maybe it was just luck and his own folly that made it feel that way. Or maybe by stealing the black bouquet and defying Kesk, he'd spurred his adversaries to new heights of energy and ruthlessness. But either way, he was playing a new game, one where every hand was raised against him and no tactic was out of bounds. Everyone was right, he thought. Everyone was right, he thought. I should have run away when I had the chance. Unfortunately, it was too late. He couldn't flee and leave. Nikos in danger. He noticed the empty space where the balcony had been. It was hard to imagine that the red axes, maliciously destructive as they had been, had taken the trouble to break the platform loose from its anchors. It had probably fallen on its own, and Nikos had loved to lounge out there and watch the revel. What if Kesk's outlaws hadn't kidnapped him after all? What if? Aaron didn't want to finish the thought. He just scrambled to the brink and peered down. 2 stories below, a rain span connected the tower to the roof of a small building. The balcony had smashed down on the bridge and shattered. Most of the planks had plummeted to the ground far below, but a few along with a motionless human figure littered the elevated pathway. Aaron raced out of the garret and down the steps. He found the door to the rain span and plunged out onto the end. The bridge creaked and shifted under his weight. He couldn't remember a time when it had truly felt secure, but the impact from above had clearly weakened it. His eyes widened in surprise. The bloody body sprawled on the rain span wasn't his father. It was the female ranger from whom whom he'd stolen the saddlebag. Her broadsword stuck up out of the walkway, so close to her head that it might have sheared a lock of her close-cropped hair. Maybe she'd had it in her hand when the balcony collapsed, and she lost her grip on it. At any rate, he could picture it tumbling on its own and striking the bridge point first, a second after her, nearly piercing her face in the process. He pushed the grisly image out of his head. What mattered was that it wasn't his father lying there. Nikos must really be in Kesk's brutal hands, and Aaron had to find a way to set him free. He started to turn away, but then he hesitated. He told himself not to be an idiot. The scout deserved whatever misfortune came her way. She'd killed Corridy, Gavith, and Dahl. Yet she hadn't shot Aaron, and he didn't know, and he hadn't knifed her when he'd had the chance. What was the point of sparing her then, only to let her die later, assuming she wasn't dead already? From where he stood, he couldn't tell. Maybe she'd watched the red axes of Nikos. Maybe she could tell Aaron something he needed to know. His reasons for intervening felt like mere excuses, unconvincing even to himself. Yet witless though it was, he'd fell base and vile if he simply walked away. No, he'd feel base and vile if he simply walked away. He set the book down and took the cautious step towards her, and the rain span squealed and shuddered. He froze. "Scout," he said, "if you're alive, you have to let me know. Otherwise, I'm not coming out there." She didn't respond. That was it, then. Maybe she was only unconscious, not dead. But all things considered, it would be stupid to risk his own neck to find out. Or so he told himself. Then he crept forward anyway. He moved slowly, setting his feet down as softly as he ever had, slinking towards the jewelry box on a lady's vanity, with the woman and her husband snoring in bed just a few feet away. Despite his caution, the rain span snarled and jerked. It didn't crumble away beneath him, however, and in time he reached the woman. He stopped, cupped his hand over her nose and mouth, and felt the brush of her exhalation. She was alive. Aaron guessed that meant he wasn't a complete fool. Maybe 3/4 worth. "Ranger," he said, "wake up." He gave her a little shake, then pinched her cheek hard. No matter what he did, she wouldn't stir. wonderful," he said. He lifted the guide in his arms. The damaged bridge had protested simply as supporting him. The weight of the two people concentrated in a single spot made it rasp and buck repeatedly. The jerking grew increasingly violent, and the snapping and grinding were louder. Aaron's heart hammered. His mouth was dry. He felt an almost ungovernable urge to scramble off the walkway as quickly as he could, but he forced himself to proceed as cautiously as before, until finally he had reached the safety of the shelf to which the rain span was attached. He sat the archer down, wiped at the sweat on his face, and panted until he caught his breath. Then he searched her. Her sword was stuck out on the bridge, and her bow presumably lay somewhere in the street below. She still had a dirk, a buckler, and some arrows in her quiver, however, all of which he tossed beyond her reach. She certainly seemed severely injured, but he was no healer. He wanted to make certain she didn't suddenly rouse and stick something sharp in him or brain him with the shield. Next, he went after her coin. Like many folk in Weevil, she carried a few coins in the pigskin purse on her belt, but more in the interior pocket of her leather armor. When he revealed her in her gold and saw just what a tidy sum it was, he grinned. At least he was back in funds again.